Okay, thank you all for coming. Good evening. And thanks so much to our guests this evening. You guys, a lot of you came a long ways and some of you came a few blocks, and I appreciate all of you. Tonight, I'm super excited about this panel because, especially this week, I will say, I think we need to find new economic models. And actually, cooperatives aren't new. They've been around for a long time, and we'll learn about that tonight. But they have become exceedingly important here in Western Montana and around the state as we try to find ways for people who are producing things and providing things for us to benefit from. But they're organized, they're business models, right? They're organized in a way that those who the economic activity benefit from the organization of the business, right? It's not sucking off profits for people outside of our communities, and I could say more about that problem, but I won't. But we are blessed to have a plethora of excellent cooperative businesses in our midst. And a big part of why we have that is the Mission West Community Development Partners, which is based in Ronan and serves Western Montana. And so tonight you're going to hear first from Blake Lineweaver, who is an alum of the Environmental Studies program, I'm happy to say. And Blake finished up about a year and a half ago and has been working with Mission West. He's going to explain a bit about cooperatives as some background. And then we'll hear from Charlie Michael, who also works with Mission West. And we then have 4 representatives of different cooperatives that are located here in Western Montana. I'm not sure what order they're going to go in. They'll figure that out. I sent everybody the bios for the speakers, so I'm not going to go through all that just in the interest of time, and we're starting a little late. But we have Dave Prather, who is the general manager of Western Montana Growers Cooperative, which is over 20 years old now, and is an amazing organization you're going to hear about, and I've been really proud to partner with them many times over the years. We then have Luke Orsborn from the Ronan Farmers Market, which is also a cooperative, which is really cool. And Ronan is located about an hour north of here for those of you who are new to Montana. And we have next to him Lisa Wade Mayorga. Did I pronounce it right? Sort of? Close enough. That's how my name is. People are like, if you're in the vicinity, it's okay. Lisa is part of the Glacier Processing Cooperative, which is a new beef processing cooperative formed north of Flathead Lake. And thank you so much for coming all the way down here, Lisa. She's a 4th generation livestock producer and manages the family ranching business and is part of the co-op. She and her family have a grass-fed certified organic cattle business, which actually is quite unique. Certified organic cattle are not as common as you might think because of the logistics involved. So maybe we'll hear a little bit about that. And next to Lisa is Hillary Cooley. She and her husband live in Ronan and became member owners of the Ronan Cooperative Brewery, which she serves on the board of. And during her working hours, she is a natural resource scientist, and she works on grizzly bear recovery for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So thanks you guys so much for coming down here. And with that, I will turn it over to Blake. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neva. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I know some of you are getting a credit for being here. Others are interested. Regardless of your reason, we're so thankful to be here. And thank you, Neva, for the invitation. To be part of this campus community lecture series. I haven't had the opportunity to attend any of them, but just seeing just all the variety of organizations, producers, and businesses that have been able to present to you and share what's happening around our ecosystem is really exciting to see. So we're really thankful to be a part of this and share a little bit too about how cooperatives are building resiliency through our local food system. As Neva said, my name is Blake Lineweaver. Sometimes I just slur through my name. I'm the Cooperative Development Program Manager at Mission West Community Development Partners. We're based in Ronan, which is an hour north. I joined Mission West full-time in June 2023 after I finished my master's work. I actually started at Mission West as an intern in EVST, studying farm to school, sourcing, and marketing strategies involved with that. In a minute, I'll hand the mic over to the better half of our Cooperative Development Center, Charlie Michael, who will be facilitating today's panel with our cooperative leaders from across the region, and they'll share a little bit more about themselves at the start of that panel, but I'd just like to thank them as well for taking time out of their busy days, busy lives, and long drives to be here to share their experiences and their roles in the cooperative ecosystem with you. So before we do that, I'd like to start off with just a quick intro too about Mission West, our work, and also share a little bit too about the cooperative model. So Mission West Community Development Partners, we are an economic development nonprofit. So what that essentially means is that we help small businesses, producers, and cooperatives here in Western Montana. Our mission is to improve the quality of life and economic well-being of the communities we serve in Lake, Mineral, and Sanders counties and the Flathead Reservation and beyond. We offer technical assistance to those small business producers and co-ops as they start up and expand their businesses. We do that by providing guidance in their business planning. We also provide grant writing assistance and financing through our in-house loan portfolio. We also connect them to local experts in HR, marketing, legal, and much more. In addition to those business development services, Mission West supports food entrepreneurship in our region quite broadly. So housed within Mission West is the Mission Mountain Food Enterprise Center, which is the only USDA certified food processing and manufacturing facility in the state of Montana. And that facility enables food businesses like the Western Montana Growers Co-op, for example, to minimally process their locally grown ingredients into value-added products such as sauces and jerkies or sliced and diced fruits and vegetables. And that partnership then expands their product catalog to be able to access institutional markets. Think of like schools, hospitals, universities like that don't have the equipment or the labor capacity to be able to do that processing themselves. So it really is an important part of scaling up local food. Additionally, we are a member of the statewide Food and Ag Development Network, which essentially means that we are the grassroots organization for connecting those local producers to resources and expertise available through the Montana Department of Ag and then across the state. In addition, Mission West is also recognized as a national leader in farmer-owned food hub development. And then in 2021, we launched the Northwest Food Hub Network through a regional food system partnership grant to help Western Montana growers and Link Foods in Spokane, Puget Sound Food Hub in Mount Vernon, expand their institutional markets and inventory trading among those three food hubs, which really was the emphasis of Charlie's work. And then for co-ops in particular, which are a type of business that Neva had brought up, we provide specialized support through our USDA designated Cooperative Development Center. We support co-ops in rural communities through startup, expansion, and conversion, which you'll hear a little bit more about that from our panelists today. And then before I dive into this overview, I'm just curious, how many of you have heard of the cooperative model before? Okay, nice. So you guys can come up and get the presentation. No, that's great. That's really awesome. Love to see that. So just as a refresher, this is the definition of the cooperative model from the International Cooperative Alliance. I'm not going to read it to you, but I'm just going to point out some really important elements of this. That co-ops are jointly owned and democratically governed businesses that are formed voluntarily to meet the needs of their membership. That could be economic, social, or cultural. This definition is reflected in the principles of cooperatives, which are these 7 ideals that co-ops around the world seek to embody. Co-ops are the only business entity with published principles that they abide by, which is really something astounding, and that all co-ops, regardless of size or sector, seek to embody these through their strategic planning and their day-to-day operations. For the sake of time, we won't dive into these in depth, but I'd recommend grabbing a flyer down here that looks into these a little bit more detail, and it's also just a really cool flyer. So, yeah. So another element that is really important to the cooperative model is that they're inherently jointly owned and democratically governed businesses. Each of those members purchases a share in the cooperative, and that grants them one vote. And then there's no more, no less, so you are only allowed that one share, and that guarantees you one vote. And every co-op has a board of directors who are elected from their membership. They meet regularly, they review the financials of the co-op, and ensure that it remains values aligned to the mission of the co-op and then to those cooperative principles. Members are given equal voting power to elect their board of directors and other matters that are important to the business at their annual meetings. This is a really significant and important shift from how other for-profit businesses operate, where usually the more that you invest, the more power you have in the business. So this really is an equal voting power organization, and really seeks to empower its members. A co-op's ownership can be structured in several different ways, but they're generally broken down into 4 major categories. So these are consumer, producer, worker, and multi-stakeholder. Consumer is what you would probably know of with REI Co-op. That's consumer-owned. We see a lot of consumer-owned co-ops with grocery stores as well. So the ones purchasing the good or the service would be the membership there. Producer, as the name kind of implies, we typically see that with food and agricultural co-ops. Those are some of the largest and oldest cooperatives in the United States. I like to think of it as well that a producer is also a business, right? So that's a group of businesses who come together to form another business that's important and essential to the success of their own business. So some ways that we see that could be with supply. So a co-op purchases inputs at a more affordable rate than an individual could. We also see that with Western Montana growers with aggregation, marketing, and distribution of those products. Similar with Ronan Farmers Market with marketing and processing. So there really is a broad array of service that a producer-owned co-op can serve. And then we have worker-owned, which would be employee ownership, democratic workplaces. Those are where the individuals who are selling the product or administering the service are the members. That's the fastest growing sector of cooperative development right now. And we're seeing a lot of energy and excitement behind that, which is really cool to see. And then multi-stakeholder is a combination of any of those. So, here in Montana, we're seeing, we have one worker-owned co-op, for example, called Crucible in Bozeman. We're seeing a little bit more multi-stakeholder energy, but yeah, by and large, consumer and producer are kind of the largest sectors there. You might be thinking, why a co-op? why do this in the first place? Because it is fairly unique of a model, but it's so powerful, and how it's able to provide these essential services for its members. Member owners organize cooperatives to meet a variety of shared needs. We see it in housing, in utilities, marketing of products. Cooperation is not new. This is something that is really innate, I believe, to the human experience, and really goes back to like lowercase c cooperation, people sharing food and resources. We really have seen that through human history. The roots of the modern cooperative movement came about in the 18th and 19th centuries, when families were moving from rural areas. This is over, in Europe. They were moving from those rural areas into urban cities. And because people no longer worked the land, they were no longer growing and raising their own food. And so they relied on stores where they had little control over the price or the quality of the food that they were receiving. And one of the most well-known examples of this is the Rochdale Equitable Pioneer Society, which was founded in 1844 in England. In this circumstance, there were a group of workers at a textile mill who went on strike to protest the poor working conditions that they were under in this factory. That strike inevitably failed, and they wanted to continue exploring ways of working together to improve their livelihoods, because it was really a dark time. After a year of saving their money, 26 workers came together to form a cooperative grocery store where they could buy candles, sugar, flour, essential things, where before they were forced to buy from a grocery store that was owned by the company that they were working for. So you could really see the reality of this, where like the powers that be were really forcing people. Every penny was being taken from them. So it really empowers the individuals to take on these important parts, these essential aspects of their lives. Cooperatives have, and they continue to be, a valuable tool for acquiring high quality and affordable goods, accessing essential services, and retaining key pieces of infrastructure, which you're going to hear some great stories from our panelists about that. And I'll just reiterate, co-ops can be found in any industry or sector. We see them in housing, utilities, banking, Clearwater Credit Union, for example, here in Missoula. That's also a co-op. So a lot of things that we don't necessarily think that's a co-op, they really are present in our lives all over the place. And as a cooperative developer, we really strive to be the connective tissue among co-ops in our area, because while it's kind of a cliche, it really is true that we are stronger together than we ever will be as individuals. And cooperation among co-ops, which is one of the 7 cooperative principles that I just shared with you, really encourages us to explore ways of working together, sharing lessons, and building community, which we're really excited to be doing that today. And they really are needed now more than ever. And so here are a few examples of some of the cooperatives in the local food system that Mission West has worked with since 1999. There are some other ones as well. 4 of them, of course, are here with us today. So without further ado, I'll pass the mic over to Charlie, and we can hear from the real co-op experts.
This is helpful for the camera?
Sure.
Yeah.
And turn that button till it lights up.
Yeah, actually,
You can sing a few songs.
you don't want me to do that. Blake, do you want to kill the projector so we can kind of like get cozy up there without getting blasted with the light? Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That way it's cohesive. Well, yeah, thank you again for having us, Neva, and Blake, that was an excellent introduction. So I think you've already heard, a little bit about who we have up here on the stage. So I think we'll dive right in. I'm seeing the clock; it's about 7:30 right now. So I think we'll engage in some back and forth here for about 30 minutes, and then we can turn it over to the audience to start jotting those questions down now, because that'll be I'm sure a densely packed Q&A segment at the end. But I'm actually going to go out of order here because there's a method of madness and jump over to Lisa. So Lisa, just starting off, Glacier Processing Cooperative, would you care to share a few words about the origin story, what the business is, how it came to be?
Sure. Thank you, Charlie. Glacier Processing Cooperative is a meat packing and slaughter facility just outside Glacier Park, so in between Kalispell and Glacier Park. And it has been operating since 1945 as a meat processing plant by a family. Prior to that, it was fox pens in the 30s, and then when the market fell out of the fur industry, it transitioned to a whole different business model. Anyway, it's been a couple generations in the same family, and many of us local producers have been taking our livestock to that facility for years, or sometimes even generations. The current owner is in his mid-60s, I should say the prior owner now officially, and he wanted to retire. And what with the price of real estate in the Flathead Valley, he could have easily retired a multi-gazillionaire because it's on 20 acres and it would promptly turn into a subdivision, I'm sure. And all of us livestock producers would have nowhere to take our animals. So when we learned that he wanted to retire after getting over our initial panic, a group of us local ranchers got together and decided to form the cooperative and go out on a limb and apply for a big fat loan to buy it. So we did. So we bought it, and it's a co-op. Very thankful to Mission West's assistance to get that going. I think that's maybe the origin story. We've been operating it since April 1st of this year.
I think maybe just I'll kind of bark my questions at you guys, and that way you don't have to migrate the mic so far. But Lisa, actually, also just want to give you space to share a few words about your own operation, and then maybe how you see some of the values, the identity of that operation, sort of expressed through the cooperative.
Yeah, as mentioned in the intro, we're a certified organic grass-fed operation. We've been organic before it was cool to be organic. So we became organic 1 year after the USDA came out with the organic regulations in 2003. So we've been that way for like 20 years. We convinced the prior owner to have his meat processing facility be an organic certified handler, because otherwise I can produce as many organic cows as I want, but I can't sell it as organic beef if the handler's not certified. So our family has a lot of convictions around being organic and also being grass-fed. So we believe that cows are supposed to eat grass. We believe that very strongly, and we don't feed them other stuff. And it was just really important for us to have a local handler that would allow that to happen. And when I joined the board of Glacier Processing Co-ops, I'm a member, producer, but I'm also on the board. It was really important for me to maintain that status as a certified organic handler. It's the only one in the Flathead Valley. Previously, we've done all kinds of things. We considered buying our own processing plant as an individual family operation, and there was in fact one for sale. But then we all looked at each other and said, well, what are we going to do if the butcher quits? Like, I don't know how to cut meat. I know how to raise a cow, but I don't know how to cut meat. My dad doesn't know how to cut meat, my brother doesn't know how to cut meat, my husband doesn't know how to cut meat. So while that dilemma could still happen as a co-op, you have multiple members that will jump in and help you solve the problem. You're not alone in solving any kind of a big obstacle like that. So hopefully that answers your question, try a little history of our business and how it relates to the co-op there.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Lisa. I think we'll stick with producer owned and bring it over to Dave here to talk about Western Montana Growers Cooperative. So I think, Dave, kind of the same starting point. Would you care to share a few words about the origin story of the Growers Cooperative, why it was formed here in Western Montana?
Yeah, well, there's a nice case study about that Neva's class did once upon a time. The Western Montana Growers Cooperative is a farmer-owned cooperative that provides marketing and distribution services to its members and also non-member producers. We primarily focus on wholesale markets, so we're selling products to grocery stores, restaurants, institutions like the University of Montana, hospitals, public schools. And we also have a smaller direct-to-consumer part of the business where we do mixed produce shares and other types of products that we sell directly to families and individuals. Our co-op was founded in 2003. It was kind of the tail end of a fairly long process with, in the late 90s, there was a group called the Mission Mountain Marketing Association that was trying to get off the ground, do similar work. It, struggled for a bit and then was eventually dissolved. I think in 2002, Mission West, formerly Lake County Community Development Corporation, received a community food systems grant, and that allowed them to hire a person to essentially get the co-op off the ground, a woman by the name of Jane Kyle, worked closely with Jan Tusek, who's still now the executive director there. And they looked around the country for a few different models. They modeled our cooperative fairly closely with one called Tuscarora Organic Growers, which is, I think, kind of greater Baltimore, D.C. area. They're no longer in business, unfortunately. It's not a great sign, but it's they did a good job for it, and had a lot of other challenges. But so we formed essentially to help growers achieve some economy of scale to ease the entry into wholesale marketplaces. It can be difficult, especially in a place like Montana, where the population centers are few and far between, and it's a great expense, both in time and resources, to move product around. So we came together to, buy a truck, have a little cooler, and pay somebody to make a few sales calls and start driving around. So,
yeah, that's great. Thanks, David. Just to kind of help, I guess, give us like that full context, can you share a few words about geographically, like where your producers are, what type of operations are represented in your membership?
Yeah, you bet. Most of our growers are in western Montana, of course. That's where we started. We started in the Mission Valley. We were based out of Arlee for a long time. We moved into Missoula in 2015, very into 2014. We started primarily with mixed produce operations. We had a couple meat producers really early on. But now we say we offer a full plate of products, essentially anything you can grow or produce here in Montana. So fresh fruits and vegetables, meats, grains, flours, value-added products, eggs, dairy, cheeses, the whole gamut. So we're pretty fortunate to have a great selection of producers here in the States, and sizes range. We have very tiny vegetable producers, growing on like half an acre or less, and then we have like Gospel Creamery, Lifeline Dairy, pretty large operations that have some acreage and a lot of production, a lot of resources.
Which farm's your favorite? Just kidding. We'll pass it over to Luke next. So Luke, Ronan Farmers Market Cooperative. Actually one is, as far as I know, one of 4 farmers market co-ops here in Western Montana. So Big Fork, Hamilton, Polson, and Ronan are all organized as cooperatives. Curious to hear what you know about, to the extent you were involved in kind of that formation of Ronan Farmers Market as a cooperative, and then really what was your path into the role that you're in now as the market manager?
So, my name's Luke, and I'm the market manager for the Ronan Farmers Market. And our market officially became a cooperative in 2020. I was there as a vendor. I actually, although I do grow some produce and raise chickens, my primary involvement with the market was my own arts and crafts business, and do some graphic design work and things like that. I was there tangentially with the formation of the co-op, but was really not involved in the nuts and bolts formation of it. It was just something that I've done for a long time as somebody that makes a living selling my art. And a lot of times what you'll find with these smaller farmers markets, there is often challenges with retaining people that are interested in staying involved and keeping the market functioning. And shortly after the cooperative was formed, one of the board members fell ill, and another one was having just health and life issues, and our market manager also was having health issues. So we lost two we lost 2 of our board members and our market manager in a very short period of time. And so I just kind of was thrust into that really by my own decision to get involved, to see the market continue. Not just because it's, part of my own livelihood, something I've been doing for quite a while as a vendor, but, something that I felt like I could contribute with the things that, that I'm naturally doing. And I feel like that, from my end, I don't really have any formal training in management of cooperatives. It was just something that I sort of have felt like inclined to do. I'm not really sure what people's interests here are specifically around this, whether it's the environmental part of it or the business model aspect of it. But as an artist, we have to learn how to creatively solve problems. That's just, part of life. And so and I really feel that that's part of the excitement of being a member of a co-op. You get to creatively work together with people in the community and get to know them in something that you commonly hold a stake in, which is not something you necessarily or really are going to have if you're involved working for a larger corporation. So it's definitely presents its own challenges, but it's also a very rewarding thing to do. There's a lot of autonomy involved and a lot of collaboration involved. And for me, part of the cooperative is actually kind of the spirit of a cooperative, and not just the idea of the structure, but really cooperating with people, finding people in the community that can solve problems, that kind of step in and fill in gaps and meet challenges in exciting and creative ways. So.
That was a good answer. That was a really good answer. Thank you, Luke. Yeah. Wow. Okay, well, one more panel is time for this intro round here. I'll go over to Hillary. Thank you guys so much for those responses so far. And Hillary, Ronan Co-op Brewery, Montana's first and only cooperative brewery. How and why was this business formed? Where are you guys? What are you bringing to our community in Ronan?
Yeah, thanks, Bro. Hey, everybody. We are the one and only cooperative brewery in Montana. It's a pretty cool thing. And the idea started before I was around. I moved to Montana in 2018. A couple years before then, that's when the idea of a brewery started. There was a community assessment done in the community of Ronan, asking what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, what's your vision for the future of Ronan. And if you've ever driven up there, it's beautiful, but take a left on Main Street under the big Ronan sign and you'll see downtown is totally depressed. I mean, most places are empty. And so the community, one of the major themes came back that we want to revitalize downtown, on Main Street in particular. And they came up with the idea of a brewery, and it was really supported. They wanted a business that highlighted the agricultural nature of the valley, that would maybe attract the tourists that are driving through there to Glacier, that would use locally made products and just bring the community together. So they had a series of community group discussions, and the idea formed for a brewery. So I joined the brewery in 2018. We bought our house and we bought into the brewery, but it didn't open for 2 more years. It was a long time in the making, and we became members because I just wanted to be part of revitalizing the community. I like beer, but I'm not like some brewer or anything. But it's just such a cool idea, and you guys, any one of you, can become member owners of the brewery as well. We have about 650 members right now. And so if you want to buy in, you come in and you fill out an application. $250 gets you in as a member owner. And if you want to buy some extra stock, it's $100 after that. And there are some benefits, but one of the biggest benefits for me is supporting the community. And, we try and do community events, bring in speakers, just have stuff to do, and a way to bring the community together. So it's pretty cool.
That's great. Thank you, Larry. I think we'll stick this question. It might be a wordy one. Got a long wind up here for you guys, so you really have the gears turning now. But I would say Hillary or Luke, I'd love to hear, hopefully both of you guys comment on this, but I was really thinking about the role that the brewery and that the farmers market play as anchor businesses, anchor institutions in Ronan. There's this theme that always kind of jumps out to me when I think about, if you live in Ronan and the brewery wasn't there, how far would you have to drive to find a really good glass of beer, right? How far would you have to drive to find really good local vegetables? I mean, the agriculture is all around, but if you go into the grocery store, it's typically produce, the grocery store in Ronan, not the one here, because Dave's got that produce department on lockdown, but in Ronan, it's produce from very far away. And so I'm curious if you guys have any other words you want to share about how your businesses, create consumer choice, empower people to make more environmentally responsible decisions by shopping close to home, or even just an anecdote maybe that, really sticks out to your mind of the interaction you've had in those spaces that you've created for our community in Ronan.
I guess two things from my perspective. Like I said, Ronan's kind of depressed, and I also don't work in the community, so I needed a place to go where I could meet some people, and that wasn't a seedy bar, because those are the things that exist in Ronan, and there's not very many good places to hang out and meet other people, and so that's one of the big things we do at the brewery. It's a safe place, it's family friendly, you can have really good beer, but it's a gathering place for the community, so people want to stay there and they don't want to go somewhere else. The other thing is we focus on locally made ingredients, so our hops, barley, almost as much as possible, we source it from Montana. We just got a liquor license in February, I think we got it, and that's super exciting. We can offer more than just beer now, but we have wine, red wine, white wine, seltzer, and cider, all from Montana.
Nice.
And then we offer some different snacks and things, all Montana and very local.
So, as you would expect with any sort of farmer's market, we obviously offer locally grown produce. We also have brought in some meat producers. One of the gentlemen that is a regular at our market, David Sturman with Shady Maple Farms, he engages in what's called, you may have heard of this, regenerative agriculture or high-intensity rotational grazing, which I won't get into, but since this is part of the climate lecture series, has the potential to sequester carbon into the atmosphere, building soil and microbial diversity in the soil, as well as allowing for water to be retained in the soil better. And that's just not the kind of stuff that you're going to find at the grocery store. Something like this is, I'm sure the technology or techniques have been around for a little while, but they're not readily available, readily implemented in our industrial agricultural system. So that's definitely a unique feature of some of these smaller farmers markets. And I would say we've also, another thing that we've done is we've worked with the musicians cooperative there in town too. So there is a cooperative there that involves musicians that can join, and they play together, practice together, have equipment and a full stage and things right off the highway. They're going through Ronan and do live events on Fridays and Saturdays and things like that. And we've kind of networked with those guys and brought music into our market venue. So as a way to kind of create that energetic pulse that we want to see in the town, that kind of thriving sense of community and a place where people can meet each other and really connect on a variety of levels. And just real quick, I think we're all sort of, those of us who are interested about the climate aspect of this, we're all sort of maybe in a weird headspace after the latest election, and I think that a farmer's market or a cooperative place is a great place to meet people that have similar concerns that you might have in the environmental space. And even for those, our market encompasses a range of political views. You'll find people that are, Trump supporters or not, but we all have similar ideas about local control, about healthy food, about consumer choice, and just by the nature of what we're doing, it's going to reduce food miles and reduce the carbon consumption that goes into the act of consuming something we all need, which is food. So for those who are distressed about current events, I think a farmer's market, for a number of reasons, is a great antidote for despair, in the sense that you can, find people, like-minded people, and share good food and in a nice outdoor environment. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it really reminds me of something that, Blake, you had used the word innate or inherent to humanity, the idea of cooperation. And I think what I really see in all the cooperatives we have represented on the stage here is something that, I think as cooperative developers, we always look for when we're trying to decide, like, how strong is this project, really? Like, if someone comes to us and says, we want to form a co-op, I think the litmus test that I always use is the need so great, so commonly acknowledged? Is there such alignment, Luke, as you're describing in your case, that this business almost couldn't help but emerge? Like, Hillary, when you were talking about, like, man, we need a place where we can just all go and feel welcome to each other. It was almost like, sooner or later, like, the community was just gonna, like, have to come together to make that possible, because everyone was so agreed on it and wanted it so much. And I think that really kind of, brings me back to Lisa. I think about the role that this facility has played, is continuing to play in Western Montana. And I do want to, like, zoom out and maybe just make sure the audience really understands this. Like, when we think about the broader viability of family scale ranching in Western Montana, and that facility that you guys came together and preserved, just in your own words, I mean, what's your sort of, your theory of the case, your view on what this really meant for a regional food system in Montana? And feel free to brag a little bit about the impact, because it's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you, Charlie. I think further to the conversation on climate, I think climate and economic sustainability can certainly be tied together. It is not an easy business, the ranching business, production of whatever, produce, specialty crops, meat, etc. It makes zero sense, I think, over the long haul to have a calf born on a property in Montana, the following fall, put it on a big truck with a whole bunch of other calves, ship it to the Midwest, put it in a feedlot, feed it all sorts of things, and then it goes to slaughter in the Midwest, and then the meat gets on a truck, and it might come right back to Kalispell, Montana. And I understand, and I'm sure you all understand, the economies of scale and distribution and why that has worked or can work for a country. But we did see when COVID happened, it really highlighted that our food supply chain has a definite point of weakness in it when you do it that way in these big centralized areas. So I think the local meat processing plant certainly allows my family business to continue, because without it, my family business, as the other local ranchers that are in this, that's what we would have to do. We have to go back to the commodity market, which has quite a few issues and quite a few control points that somebody else controls, and often along the lines of monopolies. And it's just really hard to be successful to begin with all things working out in your favor. But if you add on top of that you can't control the commodity, so it doesn't matter if this cow is better than that cow. They're all going for the same price in the commodity market, and they're getting shipped all over the country. And I think all of you know that greenhouse gas emissions, certainly there's a lot that comes from power generation, but there's a lot that comes from transportation. And it just doesn't make any sense to participate in the commodity market in a difficult business to begin with, not be able to control anything about what you get for your product. So I think when you have a local meat processing facility, even though your business is still hard and the margins are still slim, you do have some control over that, and you can maintain ownership of your product all the way through, and then you can market your product as such. So my product is marketed as organic grass-fed, but another rancher, he is a grain-fed operation. I mean, we tease each other about that, about what's better and what's worse, and his carcasses are always fatter than mine, but on the other hand, mine are healthier. So anyway, we have to poke at each other on that. But the point is, we have different products, and there's different customers in our valley that want different products. And so we are able to be more successful in our businesses for a longer term. So I think it's just one less thing to have a problem with in a difficult business to begin with. So I think the co-op, the local meat processing plant, has for sure had an extremely positive impact on our business and our fellow ranchers. And I also think it's way better for the consumers. I think the consumers that buy our product get a much better product. And they too are even whether they know it or not, or intend to or not, are helping reduce greenhouse gas emissions by not participating in all of this meat that's gotten shipped all over the country a couple of times.
That's great. Thank you, Lucille. Got one more question here for Dave before we turn to you guys for yours. So, Dave, local is delicious. Western Montana Growers Co-op tagline. You guys hopefully have seen it around town. I think the brand's getting out there, and I think I would just maybe like to hear a few words about what local means to you guys, how that's a marketing advantage for your business, what that means to your customers, and then maybe just a few words as well about sort of how that relationship with your producers is different from one that they might have with a different type of distributor, a non-cooperative distributor or buyer.
Yeah, so when our co-op was formed in 2003, that was the same year that the University of Montana's Farm College program was started. So Montana, especially Western Montana, based around Missoula, was kind of long ahead of the curve as far as the local food movement goes. So we were pretty fortunate to, to a large degree, that's probably why the co-op started where it did, because the interest was already there. We have some loose definitions. We source primarily from within Montana. We have a couple minor exceptions. We work with a farm out of Moy Springs, Idaho. They're like 5 or 2 miles across the border in Idaho that will pull some product from there when a couple of our growers run out of stuff in the winter. And then, like mentioned, the Northwest Food Hub Network that we started 3 years ago. And so we'll occasionally have some product coming in from our partners there. But they meet strict standards, small family farms that meet standards for quality and sourcing. So we stay pretty close to that, and we're always selling local product first. We're not going to preclude anything from our local farmers by bringing stuff over from our Washington partners. Really that's our reason for being. We want our farmers who are on the land, working the land. It's really important for local economies to bring up things like a brewery in a small town in Montana. Like that stuff doesn't exist without farmers and people who can actually make a living on the land. And so our mission is to be able to support them so they can indeed make a living and have a job. There's not agriculture in Montana is different than it is in other places. There's a lot of calf operations, there's big grain operations, hay operations, but there's not like a lot of industry based around distribution, vegetable production, things like that, like you have in Washington or California. And so a small producer, like there's not the scale where to allow them to enter into wholesale marketplaces easily anyways. They either have to do a ton of work on their own or figure out a way to contract with a company like Charlie's Produce out of Spokane or Seattle. And it's very difficult at the scale that a lot of our farms work with. So what we do is just allow them to be in the land, try to bring the market to them, bring their product to the market, make it as easy as possible for somebody like the University of Montana, the Good Food Store, the Bozeman Community Co-op to buy from as many farmers as they possibly can and make that transaction as seamless as possible. I can't remember the rest of the question.
No, that's it. Yeah, you guys do a good job with it too. So, all right. Well, yeah, just curious to hear some questions from the audience here. Just shoot up a hand and we'll call on you.
Oh, I've got one. I actually got several, but I'll So, Dave, how many producer members are in the co-op these days? I know you also buy some from non-members. And then, do you feel like it's become economically viable? Do you return any dividends to the members, that kind of thing? Like I get my REI dividend, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we have. It's fluctuated a little over the last couple of years. We have like 39 members right now, but we work with about 100 producers in total,
wow.
including non-members. We have to, by dollar value, legally, we have to sell at least 51% or whatever for members, and we're not close to that. We're 85% or so from our member farms. And then so that's an important distinction as being a cooperative business. So if we have a profit at the end of the year, which doesn't happen every year, our board of directors can vote to allocate a portion of that profit back to our members in the form of equity. And so we, say our net profit at the end of the year is $20,000, we can allocate any portion of that back to the membership. We have to pay some of that immediately in cash for their tax liabilities. 20% we have to pay back immediately. The rest goes into equity in the business, but it's tied to their individual farm. That's all based on patronage. So, a farm that sold, $200,000 worth of product through the co-op would get a larger share of that than a farm that sold, $2,000. And we do have that large of discrepancy sometimes.
You still taking new members, or you?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of depends on the product. Like if somebody's interested in selling product through the co-op, we look at what it is. Like, do we already have existing production of that given product, or is it something we need, or was the market demanding it, or is it unique and it's something new that we can offer? So it's a conversation that we have. We do a lot of front loading there. We try to work pretty closely with the producers that we work with, both members and non-members, to get an understanding of what their needs are, and because that also just helps us with the product.
What were some of the difficulties in becoming certified organic and grass-fed?
I think everybody would have a little different answer depending on their operation. Our difficulty was probably more along the lines of the paperwork and record keeping, because that's not a great skill that ranchers are known to have and also probably dislike. So the ranch I grew up on was always organic because we never used pesticides and herbicides anyway. We didn't do growth hormones to our cattle. So there was not really a definition around it called organic, but we were practicing most of those things anyway. So we in particular did not have a problem with the transaction on like the technical side. But we did on the record keeping side, because you need to, that's like the most boring part. Really it's just way more fun to go hang out with your cows instead of look at your computer and make a spreadsheet. So I think that was the biggest challenge for us. I think different operations that have different soil types and different historical practices, there can be a transition problem. I think one of our challenges, we have a lot of weeds. So we live with thistles and knapweed, and we control them, but we can't just go spray them. I mean, if I had just like a drop of a chemical and it would just kill that knapweed, but we have to like put little bugs down by the roots and chop them. So, I mean, it can be much more labor intensive because you're not just zooming across there with a giant sprayer. I mean, there's a lot of manual labor involved in being organic to do things like weed control. So, but we fight with weeds, we always have, and I'm sure we always will. But so I think those were challenges on our operation.
When issues arise that are relevant to the co-op's work, do any of the co-ops engage in local politics? It seems to be a pretty effective, or it might be an effective way to represent local interest in a specific way.
I'll talk briefly about Montana Farmers Union. So Montana Farmers Union is an amazing, cool organization. And Montana Farmers Union provided some seed money for the co-op that I belong to, and they also provided some seed money to Montana Premium Processing, which is a similar facility in the Havre, Montana area. And so Montana Farmers Union owns preferred stock in our co-op, and Montana Farmers Union focuses a ton on engagement with legislative bodies. So we went to Washington, D.C., for example, as part of Montana Farmers Union. I've been twice, and we met just this past September and the September before with our two representatives and our two senators to discuss country of origin labeling, agricultural crop insurance risks, those kind of things. So Montana Farmers Union is really a grand champion of political engagement. It's extremely useful. The politicians I mean, we had one that was a farmer, but he will not be any longer. And prior to that, the other 3 were not of an agricultural background. So regardless of what party they are affiliated with, how are they ever going to know what challenges you are facing or what you would like to see happen if you don't tell them? So I think it's really important, as you say, to do that. I think you don't always get what you want to get. In fact, you probably often don't, because we noticed while we were there in Washington, D.C., there was like a line of 100 people behind us, also the same day, just to ask for stuff. So that's, I mean, every day somebody's in your office asking you for stuff. So I think you have to manage your expectations that you're not always going to get what you want. Or maybe you won't this year, but if you keep at it for 10 years, maybe it's finally going to happen. But it's really important. And if you don't go and you don't open your mouth and you don't communicate with your legislators, whether at the state level or the national level, they'll never, ever understand whatever your business is, unless they just so happen to be in that business, but that would not be normal. So your comment is great and valid, and yes, it's important and valuable. And I know Montana Farmers Union does that a lot.
Anybody else does any lobby work?
Yeah, so it's likewise, we like, I've been to Helena a number of times and, testified for Senate and House committees on a number of things like farm to school bills. So we'll engage in things like that. I think it is critically important to engage in the legislative process. We're, we always shy away from being political for the sake of being political. Like Michael Jordan said, Republicans buy sneakers too. So looking at it from that angle, like, Montana was, at least it was, quite a purple state for a long time. And, we have farmers of all types of backgrounds and customers of all types of backgrounds. So, we're not overtly political, but engaging in the legislative process is really important because they have to know what the challenges are out there.
I got one quick comment on this. Just to affirm, like, that was a really sharp point, and it's really cool that occurred to you and you thought to ask the question, because something that we talk a lot about when we're working with businesses early on is that cooperatives are both a business and a democratic association. They have kind of this dual nature, and I really observed that people that get involved in cooperatives, they get better at democracy, they get better at communicating, they get better at advocating, and I've just seen, like, people like you guys be able to step up in all kinds of different venues, whether you're talking about your business or just others, and be great communicators of a common set of values. And so I think it is a really cool, rewarding part of the work to see people kind of come to their own in that respect as well. So.
I got another one, unless somebody else. Hillary, it's really interesting to me that the brewery came out of a community assessment about what do we need to kind of revitalize Rodan. I'm trying to remember the name of the author, it's escaping me now, but he wrote this book a number of years ago called Our Towns, and he goes across the country and looks at small towns and small cities that are thriving. And he comes up with this conclusion that places that are thriving have kind of, or on a resurgence kind of thing, have two things: really nice libraries and breweries. I'll have to find it and get it to you. But can you talk at all about how the space itself has become valuable to the community? And I know you weren't there, at the very start, but is it a gathering space and where for people who come through or who live there, I guess in particular?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I was there when we were looking for a space.
Oh, yeah.
Because we hadn't opened, we didn't open until 2020, and I was a member in 2018. And that was interesting. So we had a grant that was tied to Main Street, required the business to be on Main Street. And there's not many options on Main Street, but there were a few different places we checked out, and where we ended up, we're at the back end of a building that's it's on a side street to Main Street. It's not the best building. When I think of a brewery, I think of Tamarack Brewery up at Kalispell, they're this great thing, and I'm like, we're in the Mission Mountains, why don't we have this great building with big glass looking up at McDonald Peak? Because it's such a beautiful view. That's not the way it is. And that's not the point. The point was to bring people downtown. There is no other reason to go downtown Ronan, really, except for the brewery. And so if you can draw people there, the space, it wasn't ideal, but we made the most of it, and it's a cozy, welcoming place to bring people in. And we are looking to expand, maybe buy the front half of the building. We were talking about Mission West, about moving across the street and using half of their building. So we recognize it's limited in space, and there is a need to get a little bit bigger. And we would love to have an outdoor space to have some music. And so I think we're constantly looking, and these guys have been so helpful. We would not be there without Mission West, that's a certainty. They provide so much guidance, they attend our monthly meetings and write grants for us and help do strategic planning, because at least our brewery, all of the board members are volunteers, like we all have full-time jobs, or there's a couple of us retired. We have one full-time employee, well, really two. One who, our brewer, Jim, is also the tap room manager, and we have a head server, and that's it. And that's a lot for those two employees to do, and then a board of all volunteers. So that's a big challenge for us.
And just, downtown, it needs some revitalization, but it's not that bad. We have a bowling alley, there's a popcorn store, you can come into Mission West, we have a great office, so whether you're a beer drinker or not, do take that left turn at some point, come in and say hi, I'd love to see you.
We make great beer. We've won a bunch of awards, the Kolsch is our flagship. We try, we have some mainstays, and then we're always brewing different types of beer. Like, one thing that bothers me about breweries, you walk in and there's like 5 IPAs. We are always trying different types of beer. Jim is great, our brewer. So if you haven't been there, you need to come and become an owner of a brewery.
So it's really a consumer consumer co-op.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, just to clarify the difference here among these types. So anybody can join if they want to consume, as opposed to not anybody can join and be part of Western Montana Growers Co-op.
Right.
As a member.
Anybody can walk in the door, sign up, and give your money over.
You'll take your money.
We'll take it.
And you guys sell your beer in other locations too, right?
Yeah, we are slowly increasing our distribution. We sell kegs to, there's some bars here in Missoula, Folsom, Ronan. We even have a Kalispell account now too.
Did you bring any?
Sorry, didn't do that.
Any other questions?
I have one for Lisa. So now that you own the facility, what are the aspirations, for growing, expanding? There are a lot of, really bright minds that you guys have brought together. So what are kind of the next steps for Glacier?
We would like to transition from being a state-inspected facility to a federally inspected facility, which probably doesn't mean that much to most of you, but in short, that means that the producers could sell their product across state lines. So it opens up additional marketing opportunities. My family business, for example, we do not want to do that. We're focused on local, and we, for better or for worse, live in a population center that's growing, and so we have plenty of demand in our local area. Other producers in different parts of Montana could definitely benefit from being able to sell across state lines because their only neighbor also has cows, so who are they going to sell their beef to, for example. So anyway, that would allow us to distribute across state lines, or some of our producers to do that. So it's a pretty big deal. And we are, that'll be, I think, our next challenge. And then after that, we would like to expand production because much like my family's ranching business. There's plenty of opportunity for expansion for livestock producers in the Flathead because our consumer base has grown so much. And so, but we're all tapped out on processing space. So we cannot process any more animals than we currently are. And we would like to build an expansion so that we could possibly double our production, which means all of the ranchers can double their production and all of the consumers can have that much more access to locals. That'd be our next one. And then I think the third and final one would be about a retail space. So a lot of us have kind of informal systems for how we get our product around and how people pick it up and have access to it. So I think we would all benefit from, instead of, could you come out to the ranch tomorrow between 2 and 4 and I'll set a cooler out for you, to having a retail space where it has proper working hours and people at their convenience can go by and pick up product. So, I mean, I get a little ahead of probably quite a few of the other members, but I think, this is only my opinion, but Montana is like the coolest place on earth. And even though I've thought that my whole life, the rest of the country has kind of figured that out now thanks to like Yellowstone and whatnot. So I think we could totally capitalize on that, and all of our ranchers could sell from the best state in the nation, the best beef there is, and we could command a premium for that. And there's a lot of mystique around that, and a lot of producers I think could capitalize on that in a positive way. Not a creepy, slimy capital way, but in a positive, regulated capital way. And I think that would be great. And I think we should really, really take advantage of that. I think producers could do that. We have I don't know if it's called secondary business, because it turns out it's making almost as much money as the meat processing, but Montana Jerky Company, we make and sell beef jerky. And same deal, you know, if you're in Illinois and you want to be cool, you should buy your beef jerky from Montana Beef Jerky Company, because it's just so much more cool than Chicago beef jerky, you know, for example. So I don't know that all the other members are there. That's kind of like getting big, you know, and getting out there, and we may not all want to go that direction, we maybe never would. But I do certainly believe we have everything we need to do that. If we someday chose to do that as a membership, that, you know, if we agreed on that.
I got another one. So, unless somebody else knows, businesses often need like financial capital to expand or to even buy the building, the operation originally, or have you encountered any obstacles when you've gone to the banks or credit unions to try to get financing because it's a co-op?
Short answer, yes. For a long time, 10 years, we had next to no debt. We were pretty fortunate to have a partner of the co-op who, she basically donated our first little delivery truck. It was like a 1-ton Dodge with a little box on the back of it, and they had an old facility in Arlee where there was a cooler. They had a farm that they had run there, and we were able to make use of that, and you know, extremely low overhead. Same for the little office space that we used. It was in the basement of an old house, and we just sort of stuck that way for a long time and really strung it along. And then, but eventually we far outgrew that. You know, probably outgrew that space. You know, 3 or 4 years before we moved, and we had to make a move here to Missoula, and it was challenging to when we approached banks. Thankfully, there are some good ones, like folks like, well, it was at that point Northwest Farm Credit Services, now it's Ag West. Some places like credit unions, like Clearwater Credit Union, they're a little more used to working with cooperatives and can be pretty useful. We also did a member-owned campaign that really helped us because then the traditional lenders could see that our membership had some skin in the game, as it were. The ad is challenging, and you know, they say, oh, who's the owner? And then we list like 30 people on there. It really confuses them. So, yeah, it can be challenging.
Interesting. If you were to
to start another like farmers market co-op again, or any kind of co-op, what would you do differently?
Not a bad person to answer this right now.
So I wasn't, involved in the actual formation of the farmer's market. I think that anytime you're starting a new business with a community-minded approach, you're going to want to have some sense of what the needs are and the wants are in the community before you actually get started. It's good to have a sense of who's going to be your customers and what their income levels are, their demographics and things like that. I mean, that would be something I would suggest with whatever you're planning on doing. As far as for my experience, I mean, working as the manager of the farmer's market, it's definitely, is that specifically what you were thinking about, is running a farmer's market? I guess you would want to know what other farmer's markets are in the area, how close they are. Do you have a number of people in your area, enough people in your community that you're thinking about that could support a farmer's market? One thing that I have run into, Ronan is a fairly small community. We do draw on some of the areas around the surrounding areas, and so like Polson, so I participate in Polson's farmer's market as a vendor. They have an advantage there because during the summer months, Flathead Lake is a huge tourist draw, right? And they have a larger population to start out with already right there in the community. So the hours are a little weird at the Polson Farmers Market. It's 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on a Friday. So that's going to cater towards people that maybe have some disposable income or don't necessarily have to be at work during that time during the week. Part of the thought behind the Ronan Farmers Market was that we're on a Thursday, we operate on a Thursday. We run from 4 to 7. That does give people an opportunity that might be working on a Friday to come by. So, when you really think about what you're doing, I think it's good to spend a lot of time sort of planning out and thinking about some of the things that you might run into. I can also just tell you, when I jumped into doing this, my approach was try to bring some innovative ideas to build our market up, the numbers. We still, because of the size of our community, and also probably the income and things like that, we've still had challenges in bringing in what I would, the numbers of people that I would like to see through the market. And what you'll find is in a smaller community, if you're in a balancing act, right? Because you have a certain number of vendors that are showing up to your market each week, and many of them, at least in our case, many of these people are people that have families, they have jobs. This isn't necessarily their full-time gig. We do have a few full-time farmers as well, so you will have a mix. But each of those people are all, whether they're a full-time farmer or whether they're doing something on the side in addition to everything else, they're doing this because they're passionate generally about what they do, but they need to feel like the time that they have invested in that market it's worth it for them being there, right? And so if you don't have enough customers coming through, what you're going to run into is vendors that start to lose interest. And so if you're trying to build a community, you want people to feel like they have a real stake and they're getting, it's worth their time to be involved. And if the trap is, though, is if you're not having enough customers coming through, then the vendors might run into a situation where it's not worth it to them to show up. Well, if there's not enough vendors showing up, then the customers come by and they're like 3 or 4 booths and they're like, there's not much of a market going on here. So it creates a very difficult hurdle getting started, and so I would suggest doing things to network with people in the community as much as possible. That's something that I've tried to do, by bringing in, if you kind of do some research and find out who in your community are sort of like the hubs of culture and arts and, engaging in active nonprofits, things like that. People that would like to maybe have a table. Sometimes we bring nonprofits in to have a table. People that might have their own email lists that would say, hey, we're going to be down here. And so, when you post something, they share. Social media can be part of this. And the more people more stakeholders you bring into it, the more the word spreads, the more people feel like they're part of something. Does that kind of help give you some thoughts?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
Well, I think actually we're out of time, but, and sorry we got started a little bit late moving things around, but thank you all so much for your work and sharing your stories with us, and I wish you all the best. It's a terrific array of cooperative businesses, and we really appreciate you coming down tonight. Thank you.